Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, Episode 8. I'm Enigmius, and today we're taking a look at a couple of things. We're going to take a look at the changes that we made to our base, since the last time we talked about changes that had been made to our base. But first, we're going to take a look at the maiden flight of the ship that we built in the last episode, because you can't build a ship without showing off whether or not it can actually fly. So we're going to jump directly to that right now, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the base after. Now, I want to point out, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I made a minor adjustment to this ship since the last episode. Basically, I added a couple of lights. I added a spotlight. It's in kind of near the middle of the ship on the underside, pointing straight down, so it helps us to illuminate the ground directly beneath the ship. And we've got one on the front of the ship facing forward. The theory is that it would help us to kind of illuminate what's in front of us. And what you're seeing now is kind of a little bit of foreshadowing, whether I want it to be or not. It's the effect of gravity on these atmospheric ships, and kind of feeling like you don't have as much control as you might like. This is like broad daylight. I can see the ground, I can see the mountains, I can see everything around me. I can make the necessary adjustments to, the pitch and the roll and all these other things to try and countermand the effect of gravity. But at the end of the day, you're basically adrift, and it almost feels like there's a wind at all times with the way the ship handles. It's important to note that when I designed the ship, I designed it so that the thrust was basically all facing down. It was those 4 large thrusters that we placed, and they pushed down to help us lift, so we can get plenty of lift. That's not a problem. But then the control thrusters that we placed facing all the other directions on the ship, they're too small to actually do anything horribly useful. They can help us make small adjustments, but in terms of, say, we're heading to the ground too fast, we can't just hit like reverse thrusters and slow down. We have to pitch the ship so that the main thrusters, the large ones, are facing to counter the direction that we're moving in. And then we hit the thrust, and we hopefully slow down to the point where we can then adjust the bearing of the ship and kind of control the approach. Like you can see now, it feels like we're in kind of a good spot. We're moving at a controlled speed. We're not moving too quickly. We're pretty close to the area where we want to go mining. You can see it's marked down there. And then I cut out about 3 minutes of just drifting around like a leaf in the wind, trying to get onto the ground. And you'll see here, I'm trying to get as close to the opening for our little mining area as possible without crowding it, because I'm going to have to dump some rocks out of the opening as well, and I don't want it to bounce off the ship. And then I'm looking at the ground, and I'm realizing that it's on this really weird slope. You can see the shadow of the ship is kind of off to the side. The light underneath the ship is kind of also helping to illustrate the slope that we're on. You can see basically the legs on the left side, the landing gear, much closer to the ground than the ones on the right side. So we have to make all these adjustments to try and get all of the landing gear in contact with the ground at approximately the same time. And the whole time we're doing this, gravity is sliding us back down the hill, because we're not actually in contact with anything, and it's just turning into a gigantic mess. However, we're going to make it. You can see the lights on the landing gear change color when you got good contact with the ground. You lock them into position. Bob's your uncle. And we managed to get our ship safely to the ground. We've got 3 gears in contact out of 4, which is not perfect, but it could be a hell of a lot worse. And now it's just a matter of getting everything squared away so that we can go in, do our mining, grab our ore, run out, dump off the ore into the ship, and then go back in, do more mining. I was there for about a half an hour. Worked out not too bad. By the time I came out, this is what we had to work with. Much darkness. You can actually see a little bit on the ground, and especially the snow helps so that we can at least get an idea of how the ship is moving, because we can see the change in direction and the change in position of the snow on the ground. What we need to do is get enough altitude to come into our base and then land very gently on our landing pad and orient ourselves so that our ejector is over the collector, so that we can dump off all the ore that we just gathered without coming in so fast that we have a major collision and take out our ship and a big chunk of our base in the process. I'm very pleased that I chose to put so many lights around the landing pad so that it's very easy to see in the dark, because this business of flying in the dark is for the birds. I tell you, it's just absolutely horrible. Running around on the ground at night in the pitch black was bad. Doing it in a ship that you don't want to destroy is much, much worse. It's much, much worse. You can see we've got the ends of the beam that the solar panels are on. Those are lit up so that we can kind of get an idea of where those are, even if we can't clearly see them. And then we've got the great big landing pad, and you can see now the light underneath the ship is helping us to align the ship with the collector on the ground, because the light is so close to the center. If it's shining down directly on the collector, we know we're pretty close. And now it's just a matter of coming in slow enough that we can make contact with the landing pad without breaking things, whether they're on the ship or on the landing pad. The breaking of things is what we're trying to avoid here. And it just takes a little bit of patience, definitely. And also I can see plenty of room to benefit from practice. There's lots of room for practice, I'll tell you that much. So we're going to make some adjustments to the ship. We'll show you that very briefly, I think, in the next episode. We're not going to worry too much about it right now. But the main thing here is I wanted to get it down safely on the deck, get it locked into position, and then see if the ejector and the collector were working, because that's kind of an important thing. Being able to just dump everything off without having to move loads of it manually from the ship to the inventory. And you can see underneath there that puff of dark smoke, and every once in a while you'll see a rock. There you go. So it works. That's our ship. The maiden voyage, the maiden flight. That's our little ship. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, not necessarily as well as I might like. It's not very maneuverable. We're going to make some changes to the thrusters. We're going to do some other things to see what we can learn about how we like to build our ships. But for all practical intents and purposes, in terms of a vehicle that we can fly down to a mineral deposit of some sort, load it up, and then fly it back and get a bunch more minerals back to our base than if we were just carrying them manually. It's not bad. It's not bad. So prior to the building of that ship, and also after the completion of that ship, we've made a number of changes to our base. One of the big ones is we've expanded on our solar panels. We've got 24 solar panels now, which is 6 more than the last time we talked about how many solar panels we had. We're at a point now where, unless we're running the assembler and the refinery for a long time simultaneously, one alongside the other, we basically are running a surplus of power, which is kind of nice. When we get the our ship back up to the landing pad here, because you'll notice it's absent, it's nice to have some batteries that we can use to almost immediately charge up the batteries on the ship, because that ship now is down with our iron/nickel/cobalt deposit, and it's out of power because I left things running while I was digging around, and it didn't have enough power to kind of keep itself going for very long. And it ran out, so I'm glad that I've got solar panels on it. It's going to accumulate a little bit of power. Everything is shut off now. As soon as I have enough power, I'm going to fly it back up here, and we'll have hopefully learned from our mistake, but you never can tell. In the meantime, we made some changes. Actually, when we were making some changes to the ship itself, we changed the configuration of the landing pad up here. You can see we've got sort of this trough here. If you imagine the ship is landed in this area, it's too low to the ground for us to be able to get under it, even if we crouch. So we made this little thing here so that we can run down and then come up from underneath and get to the center of the ship at the very least, and some things off to either side. It worked so well that I'm considering having it set up like this in kind of like a plus shape. So there will be a trough there and a trough there and another trough there. We'll see how it goes. The collector that we had in the last episode is now reverted back to a connector, and there's a connector on the ship now. I haven't had a chance to see how much better it works in terms of transferring materials and certainly transferring power, but it's lined up so that at the very least I know that I can make the connectors connect, and that aspect of the ship will work. We just have to get the ship up here to see exactly how well it works. We've added a radio antenna. This is the big space station / large ship version of the radio antenna that we can use to keep in touch with other things that have antennas and beacons and things of that nature. Someone was commenting on, I think, Reddit, asking why would you bother having an antenna? It costs materials, it costs power, and all these other things that you put on your vehicles to communicate with the antenna that also costs materials and power when you've got the GPS system, which I've obviously discovered. And you can see all of the things that I've marked with the GPS system. We've got magnesium down there. We've got silicon over there. We've got a number of other ore deposits that I found that I marked, but then I hid them so that they don't show up on my screen unless I go back and unhide them so that things don't get too cluttered. The difference between marking these with the GPS and using these to keep track of ships and enemy ships that are incoming and all these other things is that ore deposits don't move. But your ships and the enemy ships and, whatever else, they do. So it's nice to have something that keeps things updated. You would see a marker for our ship down there, but I don't have it set up properly, and I don't have this guy set up with the range. I wonder, let's see if we can just quickly bump up its range a little bit. Antenna... How much? Yeah, it's already broadcasting out to 5,000 meters, so that would have included our ship. I've got the antenna on our ship turned off, which is hoping to save some power, but really just making it so that it doesn't show up on our radio antenna up here. Point being, if you've got things that are constantly in motion or have the ability to be constantly in motion, it's much nicer to have something that can track them real time than to have a GPS thing that you constantly have to update every time you move. So that's kind of the benefit of having the radio system. Now we can eschew any further discussions outside. We can go down inside. I got a door. I built a door. See? It closes and it opens. It's not keeping anything out or preventing anything from escaping. I just wanted a door. It's so much fun. I think you can put a sensor and have it connected to the door so that when you get close to it, it opens automatically. I've been working on the interior and closing it up so that it's not basically just open air, which is going to be a useful skill to have when we get to planets that don't have an oxygenated atmosphere. But for now, it's a work in progress. It's something that I do when I have a little bit of time and I don't really have anything else that I want to dive into right specifically at that moment. I added another battery with alongside the extra solar panels just so that we could hopefully kind of keep things working freely and properly. And you can see that our batteries are basically full. All three of our batteries are full, which is fantastic. And then we've got our medical room that I moved up here so that it's a little bit quicker and easier to get to when I need to recharge the hydrogen in my jetpack. And you can see down here as well, I've been kind of closing it in a little bit as I get the opportunity. This used to be all open air over here, but now it's kind of closed in. I haven't been doing a whole lot in this area in terms of expanding or a whole lot of extra machines, but I have been attaching these enhancement modules to the refinery. There's one for productivity and there's one for effectiveness, which basically productivity makes it so that it works faster, and effectiveness means I get more ingots out of the ore that I refine at the added cost of increased energy consumption. So there's a payoff there. There's also a module that you can get that reduces the energy consumption, but I haven't worried too much about it. I had two easy spots that I could use up, so I did with those guys. And you can put similar things on the assembler. You see these two squares, and there's a square there. Those are indicating spots where you can place the upgrade modules, and I haven't used any on the assembler because I didn't really feel like it. That's basically all that I've done down here. But if we go down here, this is the secret. This is the secret area. Now that you've seen it, if you tell anyone about it, I have to kill you. I wonder how close I can get to the edge and peek down. It's a ways down there. Don't be fooled by the rocks sticking out through the middle. It's quite a ways down there. We're going to run down. We're going to run all the way down, but we're going to speed up the footage a little bit because it's quite the trek. But we're going to get all the way down to the bottom, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do with it. We made it. We made it all the way down to the bottom, which is no mean feat. That was definitely a trek. Can you imagine when I had to do that up the side of the mountain without any kind of smooth, readily accessible method of keeping my footing? It seems slow and convoluted and long, and it is. It is, but it's much faster than when we had to climb the mountain on our own. You can see we've got this tunnel basically bored through the mountain itself, nice and flat and straight all the way to the outer perimeter, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Can you imagine? How nice is that? We've got our very own light at the end of the tunnel, which is good because the sun has apparently decided never to come up ever again. Seriously, the hell's going on with the sun? There's no sun. Now, you might have thought, for all that running down, we must be pretty much at ground level with this whole mountain thing, but we're not. We're actually a ways from it, but that's okay because we can continue to dig down and then have another walkway extending to the outside of the mountain again for a ground level kind of thing. But for now, we're going to be building another landing strip slash construction pad slash maintenance pad for our next vehicle, which will be an upgraded version of the ship that we've already got, basically taking advantage of the things that we've learned in its construction, do something a little bit bigger, hopefully a little bit more maneuverable, a little bit more reliable, and also able to carry a little bit more energy so that we don't run out quite so easily. That will be our next project. We'll take that on the beginning of the next episode. But for now, I just want to kind of, first of all, make sure I've got fuel, which I do, and then we're going to get a little view. Oh, and I decided to autosave just right at that second, too. Give you an idea of what this looks like when we get a little distance from the end of the thing that we were walking on. See, it's not nearly as close to the ground as we might have liked it to be. So that's where we've ended up. We've got a place to start our next build. We've got a ship that we have to recover as soon as it regens a little bit of power. And then we've got things we have to start looking for more of the rare minerals that are out there so that we can grab things like gold and platinum, stuff like that, have access to the full scope of things that we might want to build. Eventually, we're going to be heading out to the moon that's orbiting this planet, and that's going to require a sealed base, sealed ships, oxygen supplies, all these other things that we haven't really had to think too much of, but it'll be the next step in our progression. So if you want to be notified when I add future videos in this and other series, you can always subscribe to my channel, or you can follow me on social media. Links for social media are in the information box below the video. Leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.